All righty, cool. Well, let's get started. Lots of people here. I had a feeling it would be a busy one. We're super excited to have Donald Cherry here, who is our new VP of Sustainability here at EXP. Super cool guy. I've had to talk to him a couple times now, and I really enjoy talking to him and think he's going to be a great asset to all of us. So, Donald, thank you for being here. If you want to start out, just kind of like telling who you are, where you are, what your background is, what you do, well, just give us the rundown.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, Donald Cherry, Don or Donald Works. My background. So, professionally, I got into corporate sustainability with the last company that I worked for. It was a consumer goods company. But the bulk of my career I was there for 18 years. And I want to say about 14, 15 of that was in project management. You go through and you develop, you start to grow up and learn what you're passionate about. You look for new lanes, look for new avenues. And, impact is one of the things that drives me most, figuring out how I can have a great impact on people that not just people I care about, but I care about everybody. So on people I care about. And then the environment and how that affects people too. So going how I landed in corporate sustainability, I actually started with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, if you're not familiar. And so I built that program with the team. I built that program at my last company, and we didn't have a sustainability program. And once it was seen what myself and the team was able to do, I was invited to do the same thing with sustainability. And one thing I learned is the more you learn, the more you learn about what you don't know. And so it's been a really exciting journey and growing and figuring out how to best help people through that. So my educational background, if that matters at all, like my undergrad, I did at the University of Utah. The focus was communication. My master's, I did leadership and project management. And then I've got some executive certificates in sustainable management and corporate sustainability. So continuing to learn, as you guys know, that world is ever evolving and the way that we talk about it is ever evolving. So continuing to learn with it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And you're in Salt Lake, right?
Yes, I am based in Salt Lake City, Utah. I've been here for about 20 years. If you haven't been here, a very beautiful place. But yeah, it's great. I've been here like the last 20 years. And we'll see where that takes us next.
Yeah, now that you work for a virtual company, you can go wherever you want.
That's the major appealing points is being able to be wherever I want to be. So
I know. I'm like, winter's coming up. I don't know about you, but checking out before winter time sounds pretty nice.
Hey, look, I've been, like I said, I've been here the last 20 years, but I don't ski, I don't snowboard, I don't do any of that. So running away from the winter is definitely one of those things I'm excited to do.
I know. Yeah. We were talking about that yesterday when we were talking, and I'm in Colorado and I don't ski or snowboard or anything either. And so I'm like, winters are just kind of annoying. They just kind of get in the way if you don't do anything to enjoy it. So I'm like, yeah, checking out before wintertime sounds pretty good.
Don't get me wrong, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to look at, but as soon as you have to step outside and do the driving in it, I'll pass.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it gets in the way of your day. Yeah.
Indeed.
John, did you have a question? You're on mute. Still on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Someone muted me. So, Donald, before we start, are you going to be at the EXPCon in Miami?
I will be at the EXPCon in Miami. I'm very excited.
Are you going to be on the big stage?
That part hasn't been discussed yet. That part has not been discussed yet, but I'll be there. I'll be on the stage of one if any of you guys want to come and talk to me.
Cool. I bet you'll be on the big stage. You're like, hey. Well, cool. So I think what a lot of us will probably benefit hearing from you is about corporate sustainability, like as a whole, because I think a lot of us don't have experience with how sustainability and corporate mesh together. Because I think we're all agents in here, and which means we're independent contractors, which means we work for EXP, but we're independent contractors for a reason, right? So I think understanding the corporate side of things would be really helpful, and maybe even a little bit of the DEI side of things. And I'll just like a brief overview of what that entails, what sorts of regulations, like that kind of stuff. Give us like you're explaining it to someone for the very first time, because you might be in this room. So that'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So corporate sustainability, like, and I'm sure some of you guys have heard me say this before, but if you ask, 10 people what sustainability means, you're likely to get 10 different answers. And that poses a little bit of a challenge. So when we're talking about corporate sustainability specifically, there's a definition I like to use, which is, I think it came down from the United Nations, if I'm remembering correctly, but it's the way we meet the needs of today without compromising our ability to meet the needs of the future, right? And so obviously that has a big part of that is the environment, and both ways is how we impact the environment as a business, but also how the changing environment can impact our line of business. Right. And so when we look at it through that lens, there's so many different things that fit into it in addition to the environmental aspect of it. But then you've also got the social side of it, the people side of it. And so when we're looking at things like what is going to make this company the most resilient it can possibly be, what's going to make it so that we last forever and we do well forever. Those are the type of projects that we look at from a corporate sustainability standpoint. So on the environmental side, it might be, what are we doing? How are we calculating our carbon footprint, and what steps are we taking to reduce that? Right. On the social side of that, from a corporate standpoint, that could be anything from, succession planning, making sure that we have the right leaders in the right place to make sure that the company continues to thrive. It could be making sure that there's no forced labor in our supply chain. So there's a lot of different elements to it. But then there's also the governance side of things, where we're talking about how are we running this business? What policies do we have in place to make sure that we're doing the right thing as far as it comes to like sustainability and the environment and the people that are involved in it. So that's kind of like the bigger, higher level grasp. But then when you get to dive down a little bit deeper in it, because I know that definition is extremely broad, we start to talk about how can we as a company, specifically as EXP, have an impact in any of these areas. Like you'll see a lot of companies who will make net zero claims, right? We'll be net zero by X amount of time. And while that's all well and good, a lot of companies don't necessarily have a strategy as to how they're going to hit that. And so for me, we want to make sure that anything that we promise we're capable of doing, we have the resources to do, and it actually impacts our line of business, which is like real estate, and making sure that our agents are best positioned to do what their job does. So, no, go ahead, John.
You're on mute, John. I keep muting you. I'm sorry. I mute everyone who's not talking so it doesn't mess up the recording.
I'm dog free, no barking here. Could you? I'm going to type it in the chat thing. Can you define it once again? Sustainability, just one more time.
The way we meet the needs of today without compromising our ability to meet the needs of the future.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
And one of my favorite quotes that you said when we met the first time, I think, or was it second time? I don't know, whatever. The one that you have on your workplace profile, do good, do well, do both. Some. Can you say it?
Super close. So is do good, do well, and do both the right way is pretty much how I sum up the job, because obviously I think all of us are part of Climate Action Network and fell into, our concern for this because we felt like it was the right thing to do. And so we definitely want to do the good thing. As a business, that's where the corporate sustainability side of it comes into it. And so we start to talk about doing well because, even as a company, we can do all the good in the world, but if we exhaust all of our resources acting as if we're a charity, we don't last that long. We have a very short timetable for which we can do good, for which we can do good. So we want to make sure that as a company, we're doing well. And then when I say do both the right way, is making sure that those two things don't conflict. We don't want to do well as a company. We don't want to do, make a bunch of money, but do it in a way that compromises the greater good. And we don't want to do good we wouldn't function as a business if we were doing good just for the sake of doing good without doing well as a company. So that's one of those things that, even myself, I get off track because sustainability is so broad. That reminds me, okay, what am I here to do? Is to do good, do well, and make sure that we're doing both of those things the right way.
Yeah, definitely. Because, if we're not doing well, the company's not going to be around to continue to do good. And that was like, oh, ding, ding, ding. Something else we talked about in the past was how there's a lot of different terms for all of this. So there's like sustainability, there's green, there's eco, there's this, there's that, there's this. And we talked about that. Can you go into that a little bit more? And like is there like a good blanket term? Can we use all, like, what, can you go into that?
That is a great question. And so like, I'll explain it from the corporate side first. There's different legislation around words that we can specifically use, right? So if we say, hey, we're a very green company, or we're an environmentally friendly company, that gives a certain impression, right? And if we don't have actual data to back up the claim that we're making, that's when you get into the greenwashing conversation. And so making claims in a lot of jurisdictions, that's illegal. We could get dinged for that. So from a corporate standpoint, we have to be careful on what words we use. And if we're using those words, make sure there's substantiation behind it. From a general standpoint, I've heard sustainability, resilience, ESG, a lot of these different terms used interchangeably. And honestly, my approach in having a general conversation is that needs to be tailored to your audience. So if I'm talking to somebody who works in the environment and really cares about this thing, saying something like green or saying something like environmentally friendly might make sense to that person. But if you're talking to a general person who might not know what that means, it may be helpful to tie it to something else, right? So like if we're looking at sustainability in a home, because you guys all sell homes, looking at that and saying, okay, if a person has no familiarity with these concepts, how can I market these things in a way that is going to make sense to them? So efficiency is one of those things. When we're talking about energy efficiency, we might consider that green or eco-friendly. However, the customer, if they don't necessarily care about what sustainability, they might hear, oh, efficiency, that's going to save me money. So being able to talk to them and speak to them in a language that makes sense to them, and especially in the climate that we live in today, certain words could be triggering for certain people, or certain acronyms or certain letters or whatever you want to call it. So making sure that you're speaking the language to the audience that you're speaking to is the most important thing.
Yeah, totally. And I heard you say ESG. Can you go into that a little bit more and kind of what your role as VP of Sustainability might entail in the future, what you're working on, what you might be working on in the future? I think those things kind of might go together.
Yeah, for sure. So when we're talking ESG, and again, like I myself even use ESG and sustainability interchangeably, depending on which audience I'm speaking to. So when we're looking at ESG and what the requirements are from a corporate standpoint, there's different levels of maturity, right? So in that first level is compliance, making sure that all the markets that we operate in, we're following all the laws that we need to follow to make sure that we again, that the business continues operating in a productive way. So compliance is that first level. And then we start to look at risk management. So as an example that I use frequently is Southern California. Like we know that Southern California every year or every other year, a part of Southern California is going to catch on fire, right? And so for us, understanding that we sell, if I'm an agent operating in Southern California, that's something I need to be cognizant of. And so when I'm pitching or, providing value to the buyer, it's, hey, these are different things that you could do to make sure that you aren't as negatively, as much as controllable, aren't negatively impacted by this. And so putting risk management, mitigation plans and process in place to help continue that process is going to be important as well. I think, so once you get past compliance and you get past risk management, then you start to move into selecting new projects and initiatives, because there's a lot that you guys have already put together long before I've gotten here, and ways that you guys have been able to market, highlighting some of those things that have already been done, but then also having conversations like this and meeting with the Climate Action Network as a whole, being able to say, okay, well, what's the next step? What does it look like for us to get to that next level? And then implementing those projects and initiatives to help further the program as a whole as the next part of it. Once you get past that, there's kind of simultaneously you run reporting and communication, and that again is one of those parts where I'm speaking to different audiences. From a corporate standpoint, we've got agents, but then we've got home buyers, we've got employees, we've got investors, we've got all of these different groups that speak very different languages when it comes to these things. So being able to communicate and report in a way that appeases all of these different groups, and the investors have all they need to know to say, okay, yeah, this company is very values based and they live true to their values. That's an important thing. But then when we're talking to agents, it may be, okay, well, how can I use this as a unique selling point to bring people into EXP and to sell more houses? When I'm talking to an employee, it may be, well, if I'm going to work for this company, I want to, one, make sure they're doing the right things, that their values align with my values. But then also I want to have a place to grow. I want to have a place to develop. I want to have a place to feel like I'm working on things that actually matter to me. And then being able to provide those opportunities. So the reporting and communication around that, and then the probably the most important part is integration. Like, we don't want, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this, where sometimes you have sustainability programs or whatever programs that are looked at as a side thing. It's something that, hey, this is something that we do on the side. It's not really a part of our business, but that's not the approach we want to take. We want to, whether it be growth, whether it be marketing, whether it be human resources, making sure that the sustainability lens is integrated into everything that we do across the board. That way, everybody has that same focus on the longevity of the company. Does that answer your question? I know I kind of went off on a tangent there.
I mean, I think so. Yeah, this is all kind of new and foreign to me, and I'm probably to a lot of people in here of just like hearing the corporate side of everything, because a lot of what we talk about in here is more everyday, just consumer sustainability. And I think just hearing big picture stuff, that there's a lot more that goes into this and a lot more that goes into your job and company goals. I think hearing all that is really interesting and important as well. So does anyone have any questions for him right now? We can pause for questions and then we can keep going. Anyone?
Sure. I'll start off if you don't mind.
Go for it.
I'm not muted. Okay, good. So Donald, quick question. You've only been here, what, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, short period of time, right?
Yep.
From the agent perspective, and I think we are all agents here, whether it's residential, commercial, but the whole idea of sustainability from what you're talking about as a corporate perspective, it's obviously, that's all of a sudden brought a whole bunch of things together for me for the last 6 months. I've been trying to rack my brain thinking, how is it different from an employee versus a corporate? I know that we're a publicly traded company, so there's a lot of things we have to adhere to from that perspective. But as an agent or as a troop, what do we have? 80,000 troops on the field marching for this brand. Do you believe that there's as sustainability as an idea? Do you think there's still a lot of growth in an industry like this for people to hang their hats on and be proud that they're with EXP because it's a sustainable, focused corporate entity? Do you think that's a growth pattern for agents?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I think the big appeal of it can be Well, on multiple levels. Like I think the attraction and retention of agents who are values based is a big part of that. So when we get like-minded people, and that's a big part of resource groups as a whole, but having people to say, okay, yeah, I really buy into what this company is doing. From a sustainability standpoint, that'll be a draw to people, and having, down the road where we can train and have people who specialize in this area, that'll be something that's appealing to not only just the agents, but also buyers. It's something that you could use to say, okay, yeah, we have the biggest agent base with the green designation. Like having things like that to help it grow and attract people to it is a big part of it. But then also, I think figuring out a way to use the language as a whole to address a larger audience to further the good part of things that I was talking about is also a big opportunity. And like I said, with whether it be sustainability or ESG or whatever language you want to use around it, there might be people who are turned off from it. And I think that we have an opportunity to be able to say, okay, these are sustainable efforts and these are what we're pushing as a part of our sustainability program. However, we can better communicate the benefits to the end user and to the agent by doing things like that, And a lot of it is, Katie, you and I talked a little bit about it yesterday, one of the times that we talked, but is like the energy audits. That's a free thing that a lot of general consumers who own houses don't necessarily know about. We could package that with something like providing resources for solar grants, and say, okay, well, these things are really, really cool from a sustainability perspective. And, if all of 80,000 agents sell one house and they push these things, that's a massive impact, right? And so for me, being able to go in and speak the language of the audience that you're speaking to, whether it be an agent or a customer, definitely will be one of those resources to help, this grow and help the company grow.
That's a great explanation. I appreciate that, because one of the things that I know some faces on this screen are familiar. We've been talking about this stuff for quite a while. And for someone like myself, so you've been able to help me understand where I've been positioned with my own family and myself. I've been green. I've been eco. Sustainable is kind of those things where I don't know if I'm sustainable or not. I'm certainly trying to do some of those things better. And as a whole, maybe that will start to work out, more efficiently down the future. But I think that for the agents, I think, and just recently, I think I spoke to you about this. I've been calling all the EXP agents across the country who are green designees. And clearly, 99.9% certain that all of the people I spoke with really don't have a good understanding of how to define it and how to use it, because everyone's still thinking, well, I don't have a green buyer and I don't have a green home. I'm like, I think that's the message that's just really, we're missing a beat, where I think that if we can get this army of our agents who are sustainable speaking with the same tongue type of thing, that, wow, I think the power in something like that would be a huge asset for the brand. So anyway, but it's just, we're all over the board with this term and it's so massive.
Yeah, and that's definitely understandable, because even as I dove into sustainability, it's one of those things where the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And so it keeps getting broader and it keeps getting broader and it keeps getting broader. I would encourage people to focus in on what they know best. I'll use a sports analogy. When we're playing basketball or when we're playing football, everybody's playing the same game. But if you look at the positions on the field or on the court, they're doing very different things, So even if it means niching down and saying, okay, I'm focused on efficiency, and then being an expert in the way that you talk about energy efficiency, that's great. If you're talking about, indoor air quality and how plants can help, but having natural plants in your home can help with that element of it, being able to have that conversation with whether it be landscaping or in the house. So I think it's huge to be, like, you hit on a really good point. It's huge to be able to focus in on what you're talking about, but then actually know the pieces that you're niche down into.
I love the word
plants in the home, I was just gonna make the comment. The first time I ever met Donald, I commented on his like background. He has it blurred right now. I was like, "Is that a green screen?" It's not. His house is just that pretty. It looks like a green screen.
That's very kind of you to say. I'll even unblur it a little bit.
Does that
But
not look like a
Right.
green? This around me is a green screen. Okay, that also looks like a green screen, but that's actually his house.
yeah, no, it's a perfect example of, like I had how I originally first even got into sustainability, not professionally. I had some friends. I went on a trip to San Diego years and years and years ago. And it was the first time that I had seen like paper or metal cups, or not cups, sorry, straws. And I'm like, what is this? I've never seen this before. What is this for? And they explained to me like I was killing the turtles and all the good stuff. And it was like, okay, yeah, I'll stop doing that. And then again, like I said before, once you learn something, you start to learn more. So then it's recycling. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I definitely need to do this. I'm seeing the landfills and how overfilled they are. So do a better part in that. And then I learned that, depending on which statistic you look at, less than 10% of anything that we put in recycling actually gets recycled. Right. And so it's like, okay, well, what should I be doing now? I need to figure out, I see it, Keith. We need to figure out how to reduce what we're using. So does that mean we go from paper towels to, napkins that are made out of cloth, whatever it may be? But anyway, this is a very long-winded explanation to say that I've definitely designed my home around a lot of these decisions of how I've gotten into it. And I think very small, easy steps are relatively easy to implement. And we could be communicating like between us. I'm sure there's all different things that we do in our homes. If we're to compile all of that and have a resource list to say, hey, as you're selling a house, this is how you can pitch more sustainable living. That will be a great resource to be able to pull people into and to be able to utilize.
Yeah.
Sorry, my computer froze for a second. You guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay, good. It like keeps like buzzing out. What kind of things do you do in your home? Like you mentioned the paper towels. I do reusable paper towels and napkins. Love that. What kind of things do you do?
So smaller things like that, the reusable stuff. So I'll say that with the straws, I don't use like the paper plates and all that kind of thing. Then there's something that's overlooked a lot of the time is just like a Nest or smart thermostat of any kind. And that's been a big part for me. I drive an electric car. And again, like there's pros and cons to that as well as everything else. The green plants, I have plants on the sides of my house too, to help with the insulation, the different windows, making sure that you have the double pane windows, again, just for the energy efficiency there. Low flow water fixtures, which is the thing that I think is overlooked. And again, some of this stuff is green or sustainable. But some of it also just saves me money, which is also really cool. So what else do I do? The recycling. I started my own garden, so like growing my own food, things like that. Like just trying to figure out those smaller ways. There's the obvious thing, and when I say obvious to probably most people on this call, but I'll tell a story actually. Last year, I think it was, I was asked to speak at an event, and it was a recycling event. And recycling is not it was an event for people who work in the recycling field. And that's not my specialty. I know a little bit about it, but it's not where my focus has been for, the last 5 years. I get into that room, and during my presentation, this is a room full of people who are professional recyclers, for lack of a better term. And I pull pictures up of things and ask the crowd, okay, is this thing recyclable? Is this thing not recyclable? And so it was stuff like I had a can, I had a water bottle, and then a pizza box was one of the things. And I was surprised because I was expecting them to say, because I had just before that I thought I learned that they weren't recyclable. But getting into that room, the room was split. And these are professional recyclables. And so they're recyclers. So they're saying, hey, half of the room was like, yes, half of the room was saying no. And then there was a big debate about it. And so for me, even going into a situation like that at home, there's so much that I think that I'm doing right and that you can very easily be misled. So yeah, in short, like the things that I do at home are constantly evolving just because I feel like there's so much more information that comes along with it.
Totally. And probably just evolving with life too. Cause I know like for me, like I go in waves of like, it depends on how busy I am in life and how much stress I've got going on with other things and how well I'm able to do those things. And there's definitely times where I just like give myself forgiveness and be like, okay, I can't be perfect right now. Like I just have to survive right now, you know? And like, we all have to give ourselves grace in that aspect of like, you can't do all the things all the time. You can do your best, but that's all that matters, you know?
Did Angelina, did you have a question?
Yep, that was where we're gonna go next. Angelina, you're up.
Maybe not.
I know she said she was driving, so.
Oh, okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, we'll start with you, Evia.
So I heard this quote that was like, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. So in your thoughts and experience, like what's an idea, a sustainable idea in real estate or concept whose time has come?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, so I'll go back to the community aspect of it. And this is something that I believe has benefit to the communities in which we serve, but also to you guys as agents. And so if we were to organize, or if you were to organize a community cleanup in a specific neighborhood or whatever it may be, that's an example of one of those things that are doing good. And I think doing good is, for better or for worse, in fashion right now. And so I think that's a great marketing tool to say, hey, we're going to this neighborhood, we're going to do a cleanup. But then from a business perspective, if you're going around and as you're cleaning up this neighborhood, you've got people who appreciate what you're doing for their community, but then you slide a card in the doors of the neighborhoods that you're doing things in. And so you see the EXP agent that comes every other month and they bring 10, 15 people, they clean up my neighborhood, they help this out. And the brand name EXP, and then your name specifically gets associated with doing good in that particular place. So I think, for, like I said, for better or for worse, doing good is in fashion, which I really appreciate. And I think that's something that we can take advantage of people living out their values and figuring out a way to make that a business benefit as well.
Huge. That's awesome. Yeah, one of the girls on the call here did a beach cleanup about a month and a half ago and got on her first run, got 44 people to join her on the beach. And we were just blown away by, I was thinking maybe like 5 or 10 may show up. 44 people, man. Incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome.
Okay, Angelina, your hand is up if you're there.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here. I put my hand down, but I didn't unmute the mic. So I'm glad you moved on to Nevia quickly. So I have a few questions, but I'm only going to ask one or two just to be mindful. Is EXP, obviously we're a digital brokerage. Are we naturally more sustainable than brokerages that are in person? And has there been any math to that? Because that's kind of, I'm sure there's some formulation, you know, comparing it to a KW office where you rent desks and use space and drive to work every day. And then also like we do some in-person things as a company. I'm not too privy to most of them, but I don't go to EXPCon or my state events, but are we ever planning to become emission-free for those in-person events?
We're still defining the roadmap is the answer to your second question. And, you know, I'm meeting with the executive team and making sure, again, on that corporate side of things, that whatever we're trying to accomplish is aligned with the business goals. And so I don't know that being emissions free is one of the goals of the executive team, but if it is, that's something that we'll talk about publicly. To answer your first question, I would not say that we're naturally more sustainable than any other brokerage, but I would say that we naturally have much less carbon emissions, especially as it relates to scope 1 and scope 2, than every other brokerage that has a physical office. And so, then pardon me for being a stickler on the language part of things. It's just one of those things where, again, if we're saying we're more sustainable, we don't know how many trees Keller Williams has planted. We don't know the other elements of that sustainability umbrella. So I would be a little cautious about saying that, but I would say for sure we have a lower carbon footprint than any other brokerage with an office.
Destiny, do you want to mention that? Do you want me to bring that up for Dawn?
Yeah, I was just asking, I'll just read the question. How does EXP plan on having the efforts on sustainability to trickle down to agents and clients? Will there be service providers, benefits, etc.? For example, we're affiliated with lenders and things like that. Will we be affiliated with solar companies or, sustainable roofing, things like that, or windows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Katie actually brought to my attention that about the green division, and so I had opportunity to meet with the person who was heading that up very, very briefly. And there's some things that were in queue that were requested that we definitely think we'll be able to do, and some of the things that will need more justification. However, we're going to run through that. That's something that I think lost a little bit of steam with some of the changing of the guard on the executive team. And so that's one of those things that I think we can definitely pick back up and look at what is going to be essentially most useful to the agent base to be able to run with. So more to come. And so I was telling Katie yesterday that I think this is going to, or maybe I wasn't telling Katie, but I think this is going to be a good start of the conversation. And then we'll touch base in a year and we'll look back on this and see how far we've come. It's just this, everything is so new that there's enough, there's so much that we have on the roadmap in those early levels of maturity that we need to get done. But as we go through the year, we'll start to see some of those bigger initiatives, especially the agent-facing initiatives, roll out.
Yeah, totally. And I also think that's why it was really important to hear your side of things, like what it takes with like regulations and all the other things that go into it that none of us know much about. And so like, yeah, we just want, free marketing for green stuff and all the other stuff, but like, there's a lot of more that goes into it that's bigger, so I know we're all excited about the green division, but I also know that none of us want to launch a, ship that has a bunch of holes in it and it's gonna sink. So I think we're excited for it and we're excited to have you here. Nelson, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was listening to your stair step of compliance, risk management, and mitigation, selecting new products and initiatives, reporting and communications. But one of the things you said that was real key to me was integration from a sustainability lens, from corporate top down, of how do we participate as a sustainable company? How do we put ourselves out as a leader of sustainability in our field? And you mentioned briefly energy audits, solar grants, and some kind of tie-in together, but I wasn't sure I understood what you said there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so what I'm looking for, there's a sustainability site that was put together even before I was brought on board, but it outlines kind of what came out of that materiality assessment. And again, focusing on things where we feel like we can have an impact. There's 3 main pillars to the program. And one of those things is the people development side of things. And again, this is across agents, across employees, and across the communities in which we serve. The next thing is building inclusive and equitable communities. And so the beach cleanup is a great example of that and how we can contribute. And then the third pillar is advancing climate positive solutions. You guys mentioned that we're a virtual brokerage. Obviously, that's that in conjunction with EXP World. These are things that are solutions that help when it comes to being more climate positive. And those pillars are the base of what we'll build most things around. And so there's that, but then there's like Katie mentioned, the back end stuff, the stuff that's not visible to the agents, that's not visible to the public. That's more, again, along those lines of compliance and risk management and even disclosure, letting people know, do we have an environmental policy? And if we do, what does it say? How are we addressing things like cybersecurity and making sure that people's information is safe so we can continue to build as a company. So as far as the specific initiatives that people will be able to get involved in, there's stuff that existed long before I got here, like the iHeart Community Day that's coming up in October. That's a great way to get involved from an agent or employee perspective. People development, I've seen tons of different mentorship programs that people have within specific groups. I've seen EXP University and the availability of things like that to help people develop. So again, within the context of those three pillars, that's where we'll start to build out programming. And as we build it out, we obviously is first with the agent in mind and figuring out how people can get involved. But we're just so early on that we haven't finalized that roadmap as to what the specific initiatives are going to be.
It's kind of hard. It's interesting to, wrap the head around it a little bit. I see you running around the corporate office going, throw the trash away and do this recycling over here and whatever. And I'm realizing, wait a minute, there's no office. So how are we managing this corporate sustainability thing when everyone's in their Utah house or Florida home? Or, it's kind of interesting to measure that. So are there measurable ways to do that from a company with our structure?
There is. And so like what you guys heard me mention earlier, the different scopes of emissions. And so you've got scope 1, scope 2. Scope 1 is anything that's directly produced by by owned assets. So that could be if we own a company car or a company plane or whatever it may be, or a building, the emissions that are produced from there. Luckily, we don't have a building, so that eliminates a big part of that already. The second part of that is purchased energy. So my provider is Rocky Mountain Power out here in Utah. So whatever that energy is, that falls under scope 2 for myself. Again, we don't have a building that we purchase energy for, so we don't have scope 2 emissions. So where the bulk of our emissions, the very big bulk of our emissions are going to come from are scope 3. And that's things like purchased goods and services. It's the remote workforce, and understanding, okay, this person is supposed to be working 8 hours a day in their home office. How much of what they're using in their home is going to be considered towards our emissions because they're working, right? Then there's the different elements of the supply chain stuff. So anything that we purchase as a company, whether it be the computers that we work on or whatever it is, who are we buying those from and what kind of environmental impact does that have? So scope 3 is huge, but that's where the bulk of our work is going to be done. It's not in the traditional sense of, what do we do to make our building more efficient or use less gas? Is surrounding those tertiary things.
Good.
So I have a quote from Glenn Sanford, and Donald might get mad at me for reading this because he said we have to be careful about what we say. And I don't know where Glenn got these stats, but it's coming from Glenn. It was a screenshot from Glenn, and we know Glenn is king around here. So because the EXP runs without any physical offices, we are reducing CO2 emissions around 1 million pounds per year per 100 people who would go in an office every day. If we think half of agents would go into an office daily, that is 400 million pounds of reduced CO2 emissions because EXP exists. Thoughts, Donald?
I love the quote. I love the quote. And again, you guys got to understand my perspective is a little bit, and I love it. And I don't think he's inaccurate. It's just I get apprehensive about saying things like that, just because when you make some of those claims, you do have watchdog groups will come in and say, show us your substantiation and show us your base. And, us saying that in 2024 versus, let's say he said that in 2022,
which is possible.
It could be a completely different story. But the sentiment of what he said, I 100% agree with, and I think it's a good thing to put out there. We'll
Yeah.
just have to do some work to make sure that we can validate it.
Totally. Yeah. And I honestly don't know when he said that. It was a screenshot of a text conversation that he had with Joan Gregerson, who was one of the founders of the Climate Action Network. So it was just saved in our drive, and I was like, oh, that's so good. So
Yeah.
even
And
if the numbers aren't 100%, it's still like the sentiment of it. It's probably at least accurate in that fact. So that's cool, because I agree. I don't drive nearly as much as now that I'm with EXP than I did when I was with my last brokerage that had a physical office. So that alone is good.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we haven't calculated, or that I think will be a great piece, is understanding how, again, like I believe you mentioned, Nelson, how can we take this information and turn it into actionable projects, actionable initiatives, not just for us as corporate EXP, but as agents? How is it, do we give incentives? And I'm not saying that any of this will happen, so don't hold me to this, but do we incentivize people driving electric cars? You're driving people around, taking them from house to house. What can we do in order to help? And again, don't hold me to that. I'm not saying that that's what we're going to do. I'm just saying that there's lots of ideas of programs that we can roll out as a whole to make sure that not only the company's impact, but even you guys as independent contractors, your impact is lessened, and the greater impact is massive.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just thought I'd throw out there, since we're using unsubstantiated. No, I'm joking.
I did a disclaimer at the beginning. I was like, he's probably gonna get mad at me for this, but I can say it. He can't.
No, I do think the sentiment behind it, though, is super important. It's great.
Yeah, totally.
So if I could turn a question to the group, what types of things, as environmentally focused agents, what's important to you guys? What are things that I can take back to my teams and see if we can make a feasible project out of?
I love that. I was going to do that too. Love that.
That is loaded. There's a mic drop. Boom.
Yeah. Everyone ready? Get your ideas.
And just like that, we're out of time. I'll see you guys.
I was like, and he just ran out of pen and paper. Okay, got it.
I have something to say on this.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
So the question came up, what idea has come, whose time has come? And through the integration of big data, AI, and information science, we're now able to, while we have more data, we're drowning in data and starving for intelligence. But having the ability to squeeze the intelligence through big data, from transparency on performance currently, and being able to identify poor performance, and then be able to share, hey, the stats are showing you're not performing up to the average. We have solutions for you to get there. And so I think that's the idea whose time has come, is taking intelligent data from big data, being able to apply it to something substantial for the clients.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I know that's a huge focus of Glenn, not just relative to sustainability, but to the entire company, how we can utilize that. So it's no different when it comes to sustainability. I agree.
Totally. Anyone else before I give my spiel? John, go
Okay.
ahead.
So I have a old corporate background out of Chicago, and having been an agent now for quite a long time, I kind of bring it back to the corporate thing, which is, if the green division becomes something, what does that look like? I have some visions and ideas on what that looks like, but I think, the one thing we've learned, I've taken down a whole page of notes already today, which is, I appreciate that, because it helps me define to try to bring it down to a even smaller niche. I'm all in favor about niching, but this is almost like we need to uber niche this thing, because otherwise it's going to be the problem is the messaging. So I'm more of a marketer than I am other things, and I like to make sure the messaging is correct. And I'm very cautious. Like sometimes I'm ready to pick up the phone and talk to somebody about this, and other times I go, it doesn't feel right, because I don't really know what EXP's vision is, and I'm just an agent inside this thing. And if I say something that's not with the values of the corporate, mission, it's kind of an interesting thing. So my whole thing is how to get a cohesive message about what green or sustainable this whole thing really is, so that our CAN group of 470 members, as well as everybody else, can kind of get on the same bandwagon and, a cohesive voice.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And I think what is going to be important to note is, one, that when we talk about green and we talk about sustainability, those are going to be a couple of different things. Like when we're talking about green, that is specific to environmentally conscious activity. When we're talking about sustainability, that's more that bigger picture that includes the people side of things and the way we run the business. From a green standpoint, I think it's important, like you said, to niche down and figure out what exactly it is that you're going to speak about, and speak to those things, and just do it in a way that, doesn't break the law and violate any legalities of it. In terms of how we want to create that strategy, to be honest, I'm going to lean heavily on you guys. You guys are in the field. You guys are talking to people day by day, and you know more than I know what you need. And so when we're building this thing out, especially as we get ready to relaunch what could become the green division, what's important to you guys? And I want to be able to take that information back and, again, turn it into a system that we can operate within and create resources that'll help you accomplish those things.
Good.
Yeah. Destiny, you're up.
So EXP is pretty historic for having access to information pretty quickly. How are we going to do this with the sustainability side of it, as far as metrics go? Because like you said, what Glenn Sanford said about, the million tons and or pounds per day, how do we get that information fast on how sustainable we are, or how we can get that information for other houses as well? We're lacking on the NAR side, I guess, because they're lagged. But I think more education and like groundbreaking technology so that it could move more smoothly. So speed and easy access to information, I guess, is the question for the one part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so as soon as information becomes available, and like publicly available, especially, we're gonna push that out. Just because this is one of those things that we feel like could be a tool to draw people in, and we don't want to just hold on to what we're doing. In terms of how fast things move, just so you guys are aware, like I said at the beginning of the call, I believe my priority right now is compliance, and so there aren't a ton of, for lack of a better term, low-hanging fruit that we can push forward and say, hey, we've done this thing, we've done this thing. It's just a matter of making sure that our foundation is set properly. And that way, everything that we build on top of it doesn't come crumbling down because we didn't have a solid foundation. So once we get past that point, in terms of having our carbon footprint calculated, in terms of being able to provide to your point, John, the marketing resources to say, hey, this is what we're doing and this is how you can benefit. Being able to provide those things is definitely on the roadmap and things that I'm focused on. But throughout the rest of the year, there's some pretty heavy legislation that we're focused on complying with before we get to rolling out anything new.
Totally.
But then also beyond just sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but beyond just the symposium, I would love to be involved in any meetings that we have as a Climate Action Network. I want to be able to make sure that the dialogue goes both ways so that when something does come up, we can act on it quickly. So I'll definitely be a part of that and make myself available to all of you guys.
Great.
Love that. Love that. You're always welcome in the symposiums. This is the main part of where we meet. So you're always welcome to attend every week, same time, same place every week. Nivea. It's Nevia, right? I keep remembering Nevia,
Sweet.
like stevia, right?
Sweet like stevia. You got
Okay.
it. Yeah, I mean, I think something I hopped onto the Eco-Symposium a few weeks ago and talked about this, but like something I'm super interested is just like encouraging less lawns and like more like wildlife, pollinator, edible gardens for human consumption. Like we have 40 million acres of lawns in the US. And I think there's this like obsession with like grass. And it's really like, when you think about the built environment, like we need to find more ways to live in harmony with nature, especially if we're going to clear all this beautiful wild raw land and build all these little cookie cutter homes. Like, how can we use the lawn to like build habitats and live a little bit more in like a harmonized way with nature? And so that's something I'd love to see more, is like ecological design. And like, let's also remember that water is like the biggest threat to a home because it can cause mold. Like there's ways to use plants and native species around your home to like bring that water away from your home. And then also like, let's bring more water to our earth because we need more of it. I live in Texas, so we definitely want it. So like, I just think there's something so important about like looking at real estate from like a holistic approach through like what's going on the outside, just as much of like what's going on in this built environment. And so I think like if we could get every single agent being like less lawns, more edible landscapes, like that's a 40 million acre opportunity that we have here. So it's like also just kind of like, I don't know, that's just those are my thoughts. That's what I was going on in my mind. And so, yeah, I just think it's really important.
No, I love that. And I think that when I talk about resources that we want to push out from a marketing perspective, that's exactly along the lines of what I'm talking about. Like a lot of people, I've never heard the 40 million acres stat before. And my job is sustainability. So just imagine how many other people haven't heard that. So being able to push out information like that and say, hey, you could do this. Here's a 3 bullet point slide of how you can do this or how you can engage with the HOA community to make sure that you're doing that, whatever it may be. Being able to centralize some of these ideas, be able to provide resources on how to accomplish what we're doing. That's going to be a huge focus of ours when I'm talking about the reporting and communication side of things.
Totally. I love it. Well, this has been awesome. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. I think this was super informative for all of us. And thank you, Donald, for being here. And you're welcome back at any time to be a guest. And you're welcome back every single time we have a symposium. They're very similar to this. We just have a guest and we talk about things that are passionate to that guest. And so yeah, thank you. Appreciate you. We're excited you're here. And I think I'll just speak on my little, like, what's important to me. I think it's just really, really cool that we're at a brokerage that even cared enough to hire a VP of sustainability, because I don't think there's any other brokerage out there that has hired someone like that yet, or that has a climate action network, or that has anything along this line of any of this. So like, yeah, I know we all want it like yesterday, but we are miles ahead of any other brokerage out there. And I think we're just super, super lucky to be where we are. So that's important to me. I would love to see you all next week. We've got a guest next week that I'm really excited about. She's right up my alley. Her name is Kristen Kilmer, and I will read her little blurb here so you guys kind of know what she's about. So she's a sustainable interior designer is her title. Nevia is the one who introduced us. And her little blurb here: Kristen Kilmer is a design visionary who transforms living spaces into sanctuaries that nurture the mind, body, and spirit. With a unique blend of psychic intuition, holistic wellness expertise, and a deep commitment to sustainability, Kristen's work stands at the intersection of design, well-being, and environmental responsibility. So I think that will be a very interesting conversation. And I met with her last week, I think it was, and she's a lovely human. So super excited to meet with her next week. And I hope you all can attend. Same place, same time, same link. And again, thank you, Donald, for being here. He said Workplace is the best place to connect with him. So feel free to send him a message.
Thanks, Donald.
Thank you,
We,
Donald.
we look forward to your
Hey,
leadership.
thank you
and
guys. I appreciate
sustainability.
you.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys having me.
Very good. Have a
Thank
good day.
you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Katie, I'm gonna respond to you in your email, by the way. Okay.
Good.
I got you. It's just been a heck of a few weeks.
Yeah, no, we'd love to have you.
Okay, beautiful.
All right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Welcome. See ya.
Bye, dear.
Bye.